Hello and welcome to this episode of Cosmic Crow Tarot, where today I'd like to talk to you about my top 5 decks for beginners. Now, I've personally been reading the tarot for about 5 years now. I started back in 2018. It's 2023 as I'm making this video, so that makes 5 years. And when I first started, I didn't actually choose the perfect deck for beginners. No, I chose the Healing Light Tarot. I shared that a few weeks back, so there's a video there to see those cards if you want. But when it comes to choosing your first deck, let me first start off by telling you that you don't need somebody else to buy it for you. That is like a superstition. You absolutely can purchase your own tarot deck. Only you really know what you like and what you don't like. Yeah, you can get decks gifted. I have a few of those myself. I love them, but my first one came from myself. I did technically have my husband hit the add to cart button and buy it, but that's because I followed that superstition as well for a little bit. But now looking back, I definitely have added a bunch of decks to my collection, and they all work perfectly fine. It's to each their own. You choose what you like. But when it comes to that first deck, you really want something that's calling to you, but something that's very intuitively read as well. I'm talking pictures on the minor arcana as much as they are on the major arcana, where you can look at that card and know exactly what it means just by looking at it. You don't necessarily need the guidebook. The one we always think about is the Rider-Waite-Smith. Now, this is the 100% plastic version of the Rider-Waite. I am a huge fan of going to the lake in the summer, and I've always wanted to do tarot readings there, so I got this deck for that reason. Very, very capable deck. You can see they're very flimsy, but they're plastic. You can kind of hear the plastic there. And this is just the Rider-Waite in a plastic form. And if you're someone that likes to go to bars and stuff and read for others, then even if you're not a beginner, this is an awesome deck to have. See the High Priestess there. And every card is just like the Rider-Waite. And you can see the different illustrations there. We'll turn it over and look at the Two of Wands, for example. You can see the illustration here, and it really tells a story. Because the character here is standing on the edge of his castle, looking out on the ocean. I've always called this the should I stay or should I go card, because that's what it's always meant to me. Do I want to stay where I am, or do I want to go and try new things? And this is like a card of choices and choosing the path that you're most passionate about. So that's a great deck for beginners. Definitely. It's I've always been told, and I believe it too, with the illustrations in the minor arcana especially. You can see them there. There's the Hermit too. But you can see the different cards and stuff. This is the Four of Cups, for example. I call it the card of boredom. And you can see there the character does seem very bored. He's got all the trees around him, the grass is green and everything, and there's a cloud handing him a cup. And if he wasn't bored, he would see that cup is being offered, but he's stuck in his ways, and that's a very strong meaning of the Four of Cups. So Rider-Waite-Smith, definitely the deck that I would recommend 100% to beginners. But, some people don't really enjoy that deck as much. It doesn't call to them. Before we move on to a few different ones that I have, I'll show you 5 of them. I would like to share the specific Rider-Waite deck that I think is the ultimate deck for beginners. This is the Learning Tarot cards from Witchy Cauldron. Now, the box is really nice. I've shared this in my videos before, but I've never really went into detail. And I'd really like to share this deck with you now, because if you're definitely looking for a study deck, one that you really want to learn the cards, and I've had so many people tell me in the past when they receive readings from me, I'd love to do this myself, but I have no idea how to begin. This is the deck for you, 100%. You can find it online. I will put the link in the description below where you can purchase it. I will for the plastic one too, as I do in all my videos. But what's cool about this deck, just pick to a random card, there's the Queen of Cups. What's cool about this deck is all of the information that is available on the individual cards. We have the chakra it's connected to. We have a keyword up here, like an adjective about the card. Then we have the astrological correspondence right there, as well as this astrological correspondence. So I believe that is Uranus, and that's Cancer, so Uranus and Cancer. And I know the Queen of Cups is astrologically connected to the first 2 decans of Cancer, so we have that. If you're one of those people that likes to do the yes or no in the tarot, we definitely have that as connection as well. And then the information right here. Now, they do give you little cards here as well if you're not sure what the chakras are and stuff. Where is it? Yes. There's the card for all the chakras. And there's the card for all the zodiacs. You flip that over, you've got all the planets as well. So it gives you all the information that you could possibly need to learn everything that you want to learn about tarot. And like the Rider-Waite-Smith that we saw just a moment ago, you can see the illustrations there are still the Rider-Waite-Smith. So you can study this deck as well if the Rider-Waite-Smith is something that you're interested in. I do notice there too, like the Suit of Pentacles has that green, and then the Suit of Air kind of has that blue of the air. So very, very high attention to detail. And if you're looking for a deck as a beginner, this is 100% the one that I would recommend the most, because the cards themselves, they tell you everything that you would possibly need to know, and it's a fantastic deck for beginners. I've had this deck for about a year. It was actually a gift from Witchy Cauldron, so I'm not a beginner when I got it, but I definitely want to keep this one in my collection because I love those little pieces of information they give you that's not on any other cards. Like you can see there on the front of the box, they've got all that different information, so you can definitely learn to read tarot with this deck. You don't have to pay anybody else, you can do it yourself. But sometimes, you know, you don't necessarily want the Rider-Waite and something else costs to you. And you know, I'm a little bit more into the creepier things in life, so the Shadowland Tarot is definitely one that I would recommend personally to a beginner. If you're not really into the Rider-Waite-Smith and you're more into the creepy and dark things, this deck is definitely a very intuitive deck, I feel, but it does come with a really awesome guidebook too if you prefer that kind of thing. It's very detailed. Let me open the box. I can't really do it underneath the thing. There you can see the lid. Now I did share this one, and I might have a few other ones that I shared in my top 10 mass market decks, but excuse me, this is a little bit of a different video, you know, looking, if you're interested in getting a deck and you've been looking for a while, then maybe these decks call to you. And again, I'll leave the link in the description below of where you can purchase it yourself. You can see the cards here. They have a nice gold edge right there, which makes them very beautiful. The thickness is very good, but like if you shuffle them significantly, like, you know, I'm dropping them. If you're like that, then they will warp a little bit, but not too bad. But what I like about this deck is the attention paid to the minor arcana. The major arcana, very nice part, but I'm just going to pick to a random card. Of course, it's the major arcana in the front with the Magician. You can see there it's like very much like the Magician of the Rider-Waite, but more fun and whimsical. It's definitely, I think, awesome. And you can look at that and know he's got all of his stuff he needs up here, like his wand and his cups and his swords and his pentacles, and he's making magic with them. Like he has everything he needs to succeed at whatever he wants to begin. I want to find an actual. There, I moved right to the High Priestess. Like, what are the chances? And there's the Hermit and the Seeker. That's actually a little bit more confusing. The Seeker replaces the Fool in this deck, but you can see it's very much the Fool. Here we go. We'll go with this one. This is the Six of Swords. And I love this illustration, and like I said, this deck is awesome for beginners because it's weird, it's fun, and it kind of speaks for itself. So we have the illustration there, very much like the Rider-Waite, but you can see there that they're on a monster. But the monster almost, it's as if it's helping them get to where they want to be. So it's the card of leaving behind like stressful times and finding a time of peace and harmony. So that kind of shows that, you know, they're leaving behind what they know, and they're even getting help from the darkness, or like the monster, and that can kind of represent like our own inner monsters and our inner demons, really facing them and appreciating what they can teach us in order to move to a more peaceful and harmonious time in our lives. And I feel like that card really shows that, and that's the thing about this major arcana or minor arcana, and why I chose it is because the cards themselves, they can talk to your intuitive mind, and you don't necessarily need the guidebook. Because there's the Queen of, or the Seven of Wands, and you can see that she's like defending herself against all these wands. And she even has her little demon back here. And he's not really being anything mean. Get really close there. You can see he's kind of waving. So it's facing your inner demons and like being passionate enough about what you're doing that you can overcome whatever obstacles stand in your way. So if you're looking for something to begin with, like looking for your first deck, the Shadowland Tarot by Monica Berdinsky, apologize if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly, definitely one that I would recommend. And here's a look at the guidebook so you get an idea of how detailed it is. Like the information just on the Eight of Pentacles. You have the picture itself, you have the key words, the shadows, which would be the reversed, the message itself, and it goes all the way down to here, and the reflections, as in the questions that you can ask when you get this card, pick this card, or draw this card. So every single one of the cards in this deck have these messages in the guidebook. So if you looking for something like that, I definitely didn't start by just picking up the cards and knowing what I was talking about. I definitely used the guidebook too, and to this day I still like to look at this guidebook because it is so informative. So that's an awesome pick if you're not into Rider-Waite and you'd like something a little bit different and maybe even a little creepy. Now, staying along the lines of decks that I think are really good for beginners and also kind of a creepy aesthetic is the Zombie Tarot. Now, this one I don't think is great as perhaps the Shadowland Tarot, or definitely not as good as the Learning Tarot. Remember, if you really, really want to learn the tarot, I really think that's the best deck to have. But those are not necessarily ones that call to you. Weird zombies, that might be more your thing, and this is just such a fun deck. Like, I would recommend this deck to anyone. And it's rather cheap when you find it online. I think it's only about $15 when I got it, so definitely won't break the bank. And it's a beautifully done deck. The cards are awesome. They're not very flimsy at all. They're kind of thick cardstock. And you can see there the different illustrations of them can really speak to your intuition, but they might give you different meanings than you might not necessarily like get with the Rider-Waite Smith. So you have the Nine of Wands here, and it's very, very clear to me in this illustration that she's giving in to the demons, like to the zombies. Like you can see here, she's very clearly offering them her hands. Now this is another aspect of the Rider-Waite, like another aspect we wouldn't see with the Rider-Waite Smith. Okay, here we have the Nine of Wands from the Rider-Waite Smith side by side with the Nine of Wands from the Zombie Tarot, and it is two very different illustrations. Now, both of them have a similar meaning, but one kind of gives you more information. And then, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. When you get your first deck, be it the Rider-Waite Smith or the Zombie Tarot, I like to call that the gateway deck. Now, that isn't a reference of like a gateway drug, I suppose, but it just means that one deck would most likely not be enough. I think at this point I'm up to at least 65 tarot decks. It might be more, it might be less. I haven't counted them in a while. But what I love about having different decks is the different answers and different meanings that you can get from one single illustration. And that's the thing about tarot. Yes, there's basic meanings. There's a basic foundation to all the cards, like specific meanings to them, but looking at the different illustrations can give you different meanings. This character is all alone, looking over his shoulder, wondering when the next shoe is going to fall, if someone's going to come attack him again. He's got the bandage on his head. He's likely been hurt in the past, and he doesn't want it to happen again, so he's standing guard, defending his passions and not letting anybody in. With the Nine of Wands of the Zombie Tarot, though, you see all the zombies here, and the woman very clearly letting them bite her arm. Now, if, like, this illustration right here really puts those words into my head. If you can't beat them, join them. Now, when it comes to zombies, I don't necessarily think you should join them. Be yourself, be free, don't give in to society and stuff like that. But definitely, if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, then, and with your passions and stuff, then perhaps asking for assistance and really like letting other people help, or just not getting overwhelmed and seeking advice. I'm leaning more into the Ten of Wands meaning than the Nine of Wands here, but that if you can't beat them, join them meaning definitely shows with this Nine of Wands. And that's why I love the Zombie Tarot so much, because it gives you this weird meaning that you might not have gotten from another deck. Now, like I said, all the cards in the Minor Arcana, that's the Hermit, but all the cards in the Minor Arcana you can see there are very much illustrated. That's the Eight of Cups. She's leaving behind the mall because it's dangerous and finding more emotional happiness. Ten of Hazards, Four of Hazards, there's the Hierophant. You can see very, very detailed, very great illustrations. Some of them are a little bit easier than others, like the Three of Swords here kind of, makes you question a little intuition there, like what does that mean? Because the Three of Swords is the card of heartbreak and betrayal. I don't like when cards are reversed, so we have that. But the Three of Cards is the card of heartbreak, or Three of Swords is the card of heartbreak and betrayal, and we have there taking a bite out of it. But that's kind of like saying, face it, what can you create with it? In this particular illustration, you have we'll just ignore that card. What we have, like the heart there, and it's been damaged, it's been sliced open, but they're still able to use it. And so that's cool meaning, I think, of the Three of Swords. Really, taking the pain and creating something with it. So this is definitely an awesome deck, I feel, for beginners. It's something different, fun, whimsical, downright creepy. The guidebook itself is not all that like descriptive. You can see there's only a little bit of information, but it might be enough to like spark that intuition and really get you going. It does come in a really cool box. I lost it there for a second, but I found it. You can see it there, and it says Zombie Tarot on either side. And there's the top. So it's a nice little deck for your collection, and I do think it's an awesome one for beginners. Now, it is different than the Rider-Waite-Smith. This one follows the Marseille Tarot, which just means that the I'm not even putting in there right, which just means that the justice and strength have been switched. That's the only differences that I see with the Marseille Tarot versus the Rider-Waite-Smith. Other than Marseille's kind of just don't show very much attention to the pips necessarily, the minor arcana, where they usually show just like wands, like 4 wands here, 5 cups here, that kind of thing. But this deck definitely has the illustrations on the cards themselves. You can see some of them right there. So this might be a deck that you're interested in, and I will leave it in the description. I keep getting tongue-tied. I will leave a link in the description below where you can purchase it for your own collection. Now we'll get away from creepy, because creepy might not be your thing. I'm getting into a little bit more fun, beautiful deck, and that is Chris Ann's Lightseer Tarot. Now this deck is absolutely beautifully done. I have heard tell, and I will agree, the cards are a little bit flimsy, you know. It's not the best quality. They're very thin. But the attention to detail on the illustrations themselves, you can see the 7 of Cups there. The guy's he's not sure which one to choose. There's Temperance. With the 7 of Swords, he looks like he's going after something, the Thief card of the tarot. And we had the 4 of Pentacles. You know, she's holding on to her money. That's quite literally, I think, the meaning of the 4 of Pentacles is to hold on to your money. So that's definitely a great illustration of that. Can't believe how many of my decks actually just are all reversed right now. It's strange. There's the 6 of Cups, the card of Memories. So that one kind of reminds you of that as well. So it's a very awesome deck for beginners. I actually got this deck for my niece for her 16th birthday, so she could start learning, and it was her first deck. So it's definitely one that I would recommend as a beginning deck. The guidebook, again, not as good as the Shadowland Tarot. My last deck that I will share with you is the only one I feel that has a book equivalent to the Shadowland Tarot. You can see there a lot of information, and I like the fact that they give you a little mantra and write down at the bottom that you can use in your everyday life that might bring you more clarity and happiness. So it's definitely a deck I feel that'd be great for beginners if you're not into like the Rider-Waite-Smith necessarily. It's beautifully done. It's, I feel, a very feminine deck, but the illustrations themselves are very gorgeous. Then I have one last deck to show you. I appreciate you sticking around for this, and it's been fun to like sharing all these decks with you. Set this one aside. And last, but certainly not least, is the Tarot in Wonderland. Now there are multiple tarot decks, Alice in Wonderland tarot decks out there, but this one is my personal favorite. It's the most beautiful illustrations by far, I feel, and the guidebook, like the Shadowland Tarot I showed you in the beginning, is downright thick. Like you can see there, it's got a bunch of pages. They don't tell me, oh actually they're at the bottom. We have the number. Well, I did for a second. I saw 281, and there's pages after that, so definitely a very detailed deck. You consider 200 plus pages, and there's only 78 cards in the deck, so it's very, very, very detailed. But even if the book itself wasn't as detailed as you'd like, which it is, so I guess it's not a big deal, the cards themselves definitely are. Now, the quality of the cards, very, very thin. I think they are more thin than the Lightseer Tarot, but if you're careful with them, you can see they're not even, I've had this deck for years, and they're not even like bowed at all. But you can see the illustrations there. Very, very intuitive, I feel. 10 of Pentacles, you can see Alice there sleeping with her cats. She's got her other cat down at the bottom, and you can see the generations of family that have come before her. And we have the Queen of Cups. She sits there with the emotions behind her, focusing on the emotions of the present and really leading in life with love. Now, you don't necessarily get that message of leading with love in this card, but I don't think you necessarily get it with any of this, like, members of the cup suit necessarily. You just kind of know that it's the suit of emotional happiness and fulfillment. There's the Seven of Cups, and you can see she has all these choices behind the doors of this cupboard. There's the Magician, and that's just a fun magician. The Caterpillar is definitely one of the most interesting members of Wonderland. And there's the Lovers, and you can see like the choices of that card. You can see the heart there, but it kind of gives new meaning to the Lovers, because if you know the story of Alice in Wonderland, and I mean if this deck calls to you, I feel like you do, that's not necessarily a loving relationship. We have the Page of Cups. It looks very much like the one of the Rider-Waite-Smith, where she's kind of talking to the fish. If you look very close to the fish, has very useful information to share with her. He's got that little diploma or that piece of paper in there that's probably got information she can use. There's the Six of Swords again, and we have that same kind of energy we had with the Shadowland Tarot, where they're like going on a stream and moving to happier and more peaceful times. And there's the Knight of Wands. You know, Lion relates it to the sign of Leo. You know, passion and fire leading your way. Knight of Wands is actually astrologically connected to Sagittarius, and the last deacon of Scorpio, so not necessarily Leo, but all the fire signs are very passionate signs, so that's something to check out too. You can see the different illustrations there. They're just fun and beautiful, I feel. We have the Three of Pentacles, where they're like working together, the card of collaboration. Definitely a deck I would feel like perfect for beginners, and you saw that guidebook. It's awesome as well. I've always just loved this Emperor. I think it's so fun and whimsical, and you can just tell he's there helping the other members of his bird flock. And here you can see the box, and it's very nicely done box. But to each their own. This was just my top picks, personal picks that I thought were perfect for beginners. If you don't like any of them, and the internet is full, just type in tarot decks into Google, type it into Amazon, and you will be led into your own rabbit hole, much like Alice was into hers, and fall into love with so many different decks. I have so many different wish lists on so many different sites of decks that I just want to keep adding. There's always new ones coming out. We're getting like stacked up there. But there's always new decks coming out. Just shove that one in there too. And so I'm always adding them, and again, I said this 3 times now, to each their own. You choose the deck that most calls to you. This one, the Learning Tarot cards, I would recommend the most if you're someone that wants to study the tarot and learn every single aspect of it that you possibly can. Each of these decks, they have their own little information that you won't get from other decks, and I feel like if you're really starting out and you want to learn, if any of these call to you, you can really learn from them. There's so much information online that you can study as well, and just pick it up. Don't be afraid of it. It's one of the, like, I've never been able personally to like grow something like this, to be able to focus enough to make it into something. But if you're passionate about something, you can find success with it. You can like get good at it, and tarot is definitely one of those things. It doesn't take like special powers to read tarot cards. It just takes an open mind and a trust in yourself to believe what the cards mean. So I want to thank you very much for watching. See, we just have this nice little stack here that can move at any moment, and I appreciate you watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear if you have like personal favorites for beginner decks, or if any of these decks call to you. I always like reading your comments. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the subscribes as well. I don't like asking you to subscribe. I just think it's wrong, but if you do, I greatly appreciate it. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you again in the next one.